And we're back with Laura Briggs on Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Laura, so what shocked you about living at this base? Maybe something that surprised you, that took you some time to understand about the area?
Yeah, there's no like thriving downtown with big skyscrapers. So if you're expecting a big city, it's definitely not that. It is a sort of a small to medium-sized city that has a lot of amenities, but I know that it is not hugely popular with a lot of the younger service members, because if you don't have a car, the public transit is like, yeah, there's a bus system, but it's not like you can walk anywhere. And like we would regularly see Marines walking from the base, gates of Camp Lejeune all the way downtown, like 2 and 3 miles, just to, go to Walmart or something like that. And I can imagine that being frustrating for sort of younger people that maybe don't have a car or just don't want to have a car. It's a beautiful area though. It's very laid back. It's very coastal. We lived in Hubert, which is like 5 minutes outside of Jacksonville, but still very close to the base. And that's along this long road that you can take all the way out to Emerald Isle, which Emerald Isle is a very popular like beach location. People go there on vacations. I've seen it on TV shows with people having summer homes and rentals there. And it really is beautiful. There's a great aquarium out there, and you're close to Wilmington, which is a pretty good sized city for North Carolina. And there's lots of things to do in Wilmington. So the way we looked at it was, this is a slower pace of life. There's not as many things to do immediately close to us as there were in other places. So what's within a 3-hour radius that we can check out? North Carolina is pretty cool that way, because you can drive to the west and you can go check out the Biltmore and Charlotte and Asheville and everything there. But you've also got the beach, and then up, in other places of the state, you've got the mountains. And so there's a lot of good variety to see there.
What did you gain from living at Camp Lejeune with all of this, amazing culture around you? I mean, of course, all of it sounds like a little bit of a drive directly from the camp, but you had to have had so many incredible experiences.
Yeah.
What did you take away from those?
Well, the weather was awesome. And so that meant we could be outside a lot more. We were very active, very healthy, outdoors a lot, just because of, one of the places I lived most recently was Minnesota, where I was stuck inside 7 months of the year just due to how cold it was outside. And so that was like a complete opposite in North Carolina. So we did a lot of things while we were there. We learned to look beyond our own backyard too, like where do we want to be? How important is it to us to be outside? And that is really something that, again, fed into our decision of where to move with next bases and with ultimately our civilian life. We wanted somewhere that we could do things outdoors. There was so much hiking, like just being able to drive to a beach and go walk up and down it in the morning when there's no one there, so many months out of the year. It was just a great thing. So it really helped us decide what was going to be more important to us in the future too.
Thank you for sharing that. I love how, and I've heard this from a couple of other people that we've worked with on Duty Station Download, that when you're at a place that gives you a great outdoor environment, it tends to almost be a direct impact on your personal health. I hear that from everyone that we speak to as well. We ended up spending a lot of time outdoors, and we ended up getting a lot healthier and enjoying what nature had to offer at that duty station.
Yeah, that was definitely the case there. And there were so many like cool little things in that area that like you can go kayaking in the ocean right on the base, right? Like you can rent kayaks and do that right there. And we did a special trip to an island that had wild horses called Shackleford Banks. And so there's just like so many nice like coastal and ocean based things that you can do that are super cool. My husband even brought his dad and brother down, and they went out on a major fishing trip out into the ocean. And just, there's a lot of things you can do to enjoy and be outside there.
Yeah, let's dive into those a little bit deeper. What would you say are the must-dos for someone headed to Camp Lejeune that you haven't done anywhere else and you think Okay, if you're moving here, you're going to be here for a few years. Get these things on your Camp Lejeune bucket list.
Yeah, there's some awesome beaches down by Wilmington in that area where you can just like go swimming right in the ocean. You can take little day trips or pontoon boats out to these islands for the day. It's actually a very popular thing. People will go out there with their coolers for the day, and they'll just hang out and then take this boat back in the afternoon. Seeing the wild horses on beaches like that was absolutely beautiful. So we just did so many things in that area. And I know for a lot of people, it doesn't seem like there's a lot to immediately do. But if you start to look at the broader area of North Carolina in general, like I said, we went and we actually saw the Biltmore twice because it was so beautiful and we wanted to see the gardens blooming. And so that's like 3 hours away from that point in time. And Raleigh has all kinds of stuff to do too. So if you just sort of like zoom out a little bit and look for other things, you can do some great day trips and weekend trips too.
Love that. All right. So what is your biggest takeaway or biggest takeaways that you learned from living in Camp Lejeune? Another way to ask that question is also kind of, how did this place change you for the better?
Yeah, I would say find things off the beaten path, find ways to make your own fun, especially if you're at a place that has very specific weather where either the weather is really good or it's cold most of the year. Like you can adapt your activities and what you go and check out and do as a family because of that. And so we looked for a lot of ways to make our own fun and to check things out, but get outside as much as possible. And, like you were talking about, for a lot of people, that leads to a healthier lifestyle. We used to go on 5-mile walks every morning before my husband went to work because we lived in an awesome neighborhood that, had great trails and places for us to walk. And so get outside. And that's something I've carried into my life, choosing a home that we are home as a civilian family now is like, I want to be somewhere where I can get outside and there's activities for me to do outside on a regular basis.
All the time. Okay, Laura, last question for you. So about Camp Lejeune. So let's say you're talking to your friend, a fellow mill spouse who's headed there, and maybe they're not excited about going. What advice would you give them?
Try to find some things that you can get excited about and kind of make that list of things that you could check off and you could seek out. I will say too, like you'll likely find good friends and community at Camp Lejeune just because of the sheer size. Some of my husband's deepest military connections came from being at Camp Lejeune because there were so many other officers that were there. There's a huge enlisted community, a huge officer community. And I will say too, like, even though you may be thinking, well, it's a slower pace of life, I don't know if I want to necessarily live there. That is a town that is extremely military friendly, right? And just little things like I saw, like every time I would walk up to a store, a Marine would grab the door and hold it for me and say, "After you, miss," right? And it was just like so nice. You're like, oh, I'm living in such a military community, even off the base. So you can always find little things that make it like a joy to be somewhere. And I think just look for those little things and take advantage of, you have such a housing option there. If you're like, you know what, we really need something for the kids to do. Let's get a place that has room for a trampoline, or a place that comes with a pool, or is near the YMCA, or whatever it is, because that'll make your life so much easier too.
Yeah. And is there anything else you want to share about Camp Lejeune before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a really cool little town right outside of Camp Lejeune as you're going towards the ocean called Swansboro. And there's a couple of really good restaurants there. There's a steakhouse there. There's a place called Mac Daddy's that has it's a big indoor arcade, bowling alley. It has a great go-kart track outside. There's an awesome Mediterranean restaurant there named Olay. And so that's one of those examples of like, drive just a little further than you live and see what is there for you to check out, because those became like regular hot spots for us. So there is lots to do, but you have to look for it.
Yeah. And I just want to wrap up with this. It sounds like if you're thinking about going to Camp Lejeune without a vehicle, that may not be the best option. Would you agree? Like, this is a place where you're going to want a vehicle, or at least have someone that you can ride share with.
Yeah, for sure. Come up with some sort of a plan, because it's not really like, especially if you're going to go off the base, like most military bases, everything you need and want is on the base if you wanted to just stay there in that bubble. But if you want to go beyond that, I do recommend having someone who has a vehicle or access to it, or planning to buy a used one when you get there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Laura, thank you for sharing everything you know about Camp Lejeune, and for also teaching me the correct way to pronounce it, because when Laura and I met before we recorded this, I was like, let's talk about Camp Lejeune. So
we're all like that. Yeah, sure.
Laura, please let our listeners and viewers know where they can connect with you.
Yes, please find me on LinkedIn under Laura Briggs. And I love connecting with other military spouses. So if you have other specific questions or concerns, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help.
Yeah. And you guys, Laura is an author. She's got several incredible books out, including The 6-Figure Freelancer. We will try to link those in the show notes. We absolutely recommend that you check those out. She is a wealth of information. All right, Laura, thank you so much. This has been another installment of the Duty Station Download. If you want to get in on the conversation about Camp Lejeune, you can send us an email at podcast@vertforce.us. We'd be happy to connect with you. If you appreciate this content, share it with a friend or another military family. Be sure to subscribe to our show so you don't miss an episode. Bye.